Monday, May 25th, Committee of the Whole meeting for the Village of Cumberland. Hopefully we're all in the right place. I would like to start by recognizing that we are gathering and governing on the unceded traditional territory of what is now known as the Comox Nation. And we are ever grateful for their grace and collaboration as we do this good work on their lands. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of, to the closed portion, I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose?
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Seconder, and all in favor of that? That is carried. And I'm in the closed agenda, so I'm going to move into the open agenda so I know where we are. Yeah, first up is delegations, and the museum is first. Cumberland and District Historical Society. Come on up. You're welcome to sit or stand, or Ryan's going to introduce you.
Yeah,
You start, Ryan.
let me start things off.
You start things off.
So yeah, the village does have a community service partnership agreement with the Cumberland and District Historical Society through 2027, like the rest of ours, for the operation of the Cumberland Museum and Archives. One of the society's commitments under that is the annual report to council, which is what I'll introduce shortly. But first, I just wanted to speak briefly to the recommendation that's before the committee today. So the museum has some external funding available to rejuvenate the south-facing facade of the cultural center, as well as creating some complementary interpretive elements that would support that or complement it. And so with village approval, they would also they'd intend to manage and coordinate that project as well. And so staff see this as a great opportunity to get some needed maintenance done to a valuable village facility. And so our recommendation is that the committee direct us to develop a partnership agreement with the Cumberland and District Historical Society. That would clarify the scope of the project, clarify the village's roles, and just sort out all of those details. And that proposal would be brought back to council for consideration once drafted. So with that said, I'll turn things over to Jillian Roberts, who's the Executive Director of the Cumberland Museum and Archives. She'll present her annual report, and she'll also be able to speak a little bit more about that restoration project.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Come on up, Jillian.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here on the traditional territory of the Comox First Nations. My name's Jillian. I'm the Executive Director of the Cumberland and District Historical Society. Our vision is to be the cultural hub that brings voice to the past and engages in the now. I'm the Executive Director of the Museum and Archives, which is funded by and operated by the Cumberland and District Historical Society. And our global ends policy, what we want to achieve is to preserve and share the histories and stories of the village of Cumberland and Comox Valley for current and future generations. As I go through our past year, 2025, I will share what we've done and also how that connects to our strategic plan. So, as a strong steward looking after the preservation of the museum's collection, it's held in public trust, and we want to ensure the accessibility of that collection, and that we are fostering community connection and have diverse representation, which reflects the village of Cumberland and the history of the village of Cumberland. Now, through our community archival research library, we've had in 2025 56 hours of in-person research. People looking to answer questions, whether that's for writing a book or a university thesis or family histories. And some of those stories are really special. We've had people travel over 13 hours to come to the Community Research Library and spend the day there doing their own family research. Separate to that person who traveled a really, really long way, Megan Kyoko Ray has been doing last year was doing family research to write a book on her family, who are Japanese Canadian and lived in Royston, and she got funded for a grant to research her family through our archives. On top of that personal archival research, we've had over 100 hours of digital research requests, and that's over 100, requests that we answer all year long based on what we have in our archives, answering questions for people in our community. Last year, to become more accessible and to share Cumberland stories more widely, we launched the Digital Museum. CumberlandHistory.ca is a really high quality portal that shares the stories of Cumberland. It was launched in spring of 2025, and by the end of the year, there had already been over 70,000 independent views of that website, which is quite incredible. We have all different programs that we run throughout the year at the Cumberland Museum and Archives. We had over 586 school visitors come into the museum for school programs. Most of the time that looks like a hands-on program where the students are becoming archivists, using our education collection, and then they get a guided tour of the museum, and often that's combined with an outdoor tour as well of either Number One Town or Chinatown. On top of those school visitors, we had over 100 students, 4 different classes from Cumberland Community School participate in Bean Dinner, doing a long project with us in collaboration with the Cumberland Community School and Cumberland Community Schools Society. On top of the tours that students do, we had over 200 people on tours throughout the year. Some of those are public tours, some of those are private tours. We have a private tour right now happening of the Komodo family who are in Number One Town learning about where their family used to live before they were forcibly removed. On top of our Number One Town and Chinatown tours, we also last year had a Spooky Cumberland tour run by Megan Kersons and a labor history tour. Labor history, of course, being really having a really strong connection to Cumberland because of how deadly our mines were. We've run professional development with teachers throughout the valley, over 40 teachers coming into the museum, learning ways to connect Cumberland's history with the curriculum in the classroom. And we also have a barrier-free after-school program that runs for 7 to 8 weeks. We had over 50 kids throughout the year on our multiple programs come through and do history detectives with the museum. Here are just a couple of photos from Bean Dinner, which I wanted to share. It's great to see how deeply connected the community gets with that program as students come up with their own questions and research them over a period of time and then share with all of the visitors of Bean Dinner, including their families, passing down the stories and history of Cumberland to next generations. It's really important to further develop our connections with the community, and one of the ways we're doing that is through Collaboration Studio. Last year we had 2 Collaboration Studio exhibitions, What Do You Bring With You?, which was in partnership with the Immigrant Welcome Center and Comox Valley Arts, sharing how our stories and belonging can tie to objects. And then we have Cumberland Forest Reflections in collaboration and partnership with Cumberland Community Forest Society, sharing the story of the 25 years of Cumberland Community Forest and the over 500 hectares of land that they have protected in that time. They also, through both of these events and all of our exhibitions, we've had great accessible and community building events, so exhibition openings, Cumberland Community Forest has had mapping events, lots of other reasons for the people to come into the museum. This was just a review that I pulled because it's so important for us to be truthful and to be telling the full story of Cumberland. We are the people's museum. We share stories. We don't just share objects. We want to share the whole story of Cumberland and really amplify diverse voices. On top of those exhibitions and programs, we've been connecting with families, particularly with the exhibitions and projects we've had at the moment. We've connected with a lot of families from the Japanese Canadian community to share their stories, and those are shared in an exhibition. And also with some families, we're working on the Japanese Canadian Legacy Project in collaboration with the Village and Japanese Canadian Legacy Societies. Through that, we are doing the interpretation for panels that will go to Number One Town, Nikkei Park, and Nikkei no Haka Japanese Canadian Cemetery. As usual, we've had the Haunted Mine experience in 2025, a Lunar New Year event. We always have community rentals bringing people into the museum, and we're a venue for Woodstove Festival. Winter Fair and Miners Memorial are our two biggest fundraising events. We had more people than ever last year, with over 3,000 people coming through Winter Fair. And then through that, we carefully curate the market stall holders to ensure that we are sharing artisan, locally made goods with the community when they come in, so they can see more about what's happening in our Great Valley. Then for Miners Memorial, that's our big fundraiser through bouquet donations, and it's all about recognizing the people who have died in the dangerous mines of Cumberland, and remembering and recognizing that we're still here fighting for workers' rights and ensuring that there are equal rights for everyone. Again, we want to be a living museum, active participant in the conversation and community building. And last year, throughout the programs, exhibitions, programs, admissions, and events that we had over 14,500 visitors coming through the museum. The community partnership with the Village is absolutely vital for what we do. The community partnership agreement is for $34,500, and this is the last year of the additional contribution of $8,260, which was to support the YP Young Foundation grant for the museum renovations, and that runs until the end of this year. That really allows us to do what we do. A lot of grants that the museum gets are specifically tied to particular projects. Having this money available to allow us to keep running and doing our daily operations and everything that we do from year to year is really, really important to us. Our other big funders are the YP Young Foundation and the Vancouver Foundation, as well as BC Council for the Arts, the CVRD, and BC Gaming. You will see that our revenues were down this year, and that is mostly because the decrease in COVID grants. So because of the decrease in COVID grants, our revenue is down, but we're still in a good, strong financial position, and we have an emergency cash fund of $75,000. Going on to the next year, we've got In Our Voice, which is funded by the Comox Valley Community Foundation, updating our permanent collection. Then we've digitized a bunch of original unique maps so that we can once again share them without danger of damage. Mini museum explorers through Cumberland Community Foundation, and as Ryan mentioned, the Cultural Center facade rejuvenation. So the facade was built in 1993 and represents historical buildings of Cumberland mostly of buildings in Cumberland Chinatown. And through a community partnership, it would allow the museum to hold the responsibility for scoping, contracting, and funding the works to rejuvenate the existing facade. Since 1993, it's gone through the usual wear and tear over that time. It has some damage and is looking worn down. And we would, what we would like to see happen is preserve fresh paint, keeping the same look and feel, but ensuring there's no further damage, and then decreasing the need for emergency repairs. We'd also like to include interpretation. People are really interested in the facade. They come into the museum all the time asking about it and how they get into that cool building. So we'd really like to share more information about the stories of that building and why it looks the way that it does. For this year as well, we have Stolen Bases. If you haven't already seen Stolen Bases, I really recommend you come check it out. This is a quote from Rachel Iwasa saying that we worked with Rachel in the exhibition, and she said that through this exhibition, we've made her feel welcome in a way that she knows her father never felt in Cumberland after he was forcibly removed in 1942. And I think that's what we do, and that's what it's all about. And upcoming also is the 40th anniversary of Miners Memorial, which I just wanted to share as well. That'll be a really special event from June 11th to June 15th. There will be a concert by Maria Dunn and canoe tour, history canoe tour, as well as the usual songs of the workers and everything that the Miners Memorial is all about. Thank you very much. Questions?
Thanks so much, Jillian. That was excellent. And yeah, just congratulations on I really appreciate getting the school kids into the museum. And I did happen to be in there one day when there was a group of kids downstairs, and they were extremely enthusiastic about what they were doing. It was pretty great energy in that space. So thank you for all you do to make that happen. Council, questions, comments?
Just I saw the Stolen Bases exhibit. It was fantastic, and thank you for all your work putting that on there. I did notice in the grant revenues that there's some significant declines in there, particularly around the Vancouver Foundation. Do you foresee that to continue, or do you see new revenue streams coming on board, or was that related to COVID in particular?
That particular grant was related to COVID, so I don't foresee that we will have one large grant that's made the big difference like Vancouver Foundation has, but we've seen this coming and we've already diversified our sources of revenue, and this year we've received quite a few grants that we haven't in the past, knowing that we needed to branch out.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, it's just that's a big chunk of money that was absent to you from the year before. So excellent.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Love the engagement. Can't wait to see the facade fixed up. Yeah, thanks for everything.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks so much for being here. Next up is Cumberland Community School. Oh, sorry, there's a recommendation there.
I will move that the committee direct staff to pursue a partnership with the Cumberland and District Historical Society for facade improvements to the southern exterior of the Cumberland Cultural Center and report back to council with a proposed agreement.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Okay, and now next up is Cumberland Community Schools Society.
So, as you may have gathered, we have a community service partnership agreement in place as well with the Cumberland Community School Society. Annual report, that's why we're here today, all that fun stuff that I've been saying for the last couple weeks. So that agreement was amended late last year to allow CCSS to use village facilities once per month for free in order to host their pop-up youth centers, just while their permanent home for it is under construction or not available due to construction. Unfortunately, we've been told that CCSS doesn't currently have the staff capacity to take on those additional bookings. So if you're wondering why none have been booked through the village, that's why. But we remain ready and willing to help them out as soon as they're willing and able to move ahead. So with that said, I'll turn things over to Executive Director Sue Lovelace and Program Coordinator Kate Ashton of the Cumberland Community Schools Society, who will deliver the annual report presentation.
Thanks, Ryan. Hello, thanks for being here. You might, I don't know how you're going to work that mic between the two of you. We'll see how that goes.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having us here today to share a little bit about our youth center and our youth programming. So CCSS has now been operating in the community for 26 years as the only social service agency operating directly in the village. We work to improve access to nourishing food, inclusive recreation, lifelong learning, and networks of support in the village. So over the last year, we've continued to focus on maintaining our core programming, including our food security initiatives, our drop-in youth center, as well as barrier-free after-school and community programs. So our work in the community continues to be guided by our strategic plan, which we put in place in 2025. So we're working hard to increase our capacity so we can maintain our core programming and respond to emerging needs as they arrive. We'd like to champion food security through both our school meal program and also the food share program. And also we provide nourishing food with both our after-school programs and our drop-in youth center. We work actively to identify gaps in service and ally community, our programming with community needs in the community. We're working hard to become more actively inclusive. So we really believe that everyone deserves access to safe and welcoming spaces and meaningful opportunities to engage. And we recognize that inclusion requires intentional action. So we're working to identify and remove barriers and create environments where everyone feels respected, supported, and empowered. But today we're here specifically to talk to you about the youth center and after-school programming for youth. So our goals for our youth center programming continue to remain the same. We're committed to providing a safe and supportive space after school and the evening for youth ages 11-15 to connect. We want to provide opportunities for youth to build skills, confidence, and social connections, to encourage participation in healthy and engaging activities, to foster some relationships between peers and also adults, and like between peers and trusted adults. And we also try hard to collaborate with community organizations, business, and partners to help further these goals. So over the last year, as you know, last June we lost access to the space where we'd been operating our youth center for 10 years when they tore down the building for the school expansion. So since that time, we've been working actively with the school administration to be able to continue operating the youth center in several additional alternative locations. So last summer, we opened the youth center in a portable on school grounds. So on the first day that we were open, we had 10 youth show up like 5 minutes before we opened, and they helped us, they had all helped us move out of the old youth center space, and they helped set up the new youth center space in the portable. And then we saw consistent attendance throughout the summer, even though the space was a bit difficult to find. And then in September, we moved into half a classroom and also sometimes the school gym. So we've been operating out of half a classroom and the school gym. And so we're happy to share that despite those changes, we still had some consistent attendance that was sort of consistent with the previous year. So despite having 3 locations in the past year, youth are still actively seeking us out. So I think this clearly illustrates the importance of this program and how providing a safe space or third space for our youth in the community is really important.
So as you saw just from the pictures there, our space is a lot smaller than it was previously. But it hasn't appeared to have an impact on the youth. They still like to come. They all pile on top of each other on the couches. They look at their phones. They chit-chat. The craft center is packed. And for the first time this year, our video game center is underutilized. So it just, yeah, who knows? You get different kids every year, and they're all into different things, so you just never know what each year is going to look like. This year, we had 105 different youth access the center with an average of 7 youth per night. And throughout all of our changes and everything that has happened, we remain a trusted and values-based for the youth in our community. So we're pretty proud of that. So this is an example of our activities calendar. As you can see, we're open 3 days a week. It's a $20 annual membership fee, so that takes you all the way from September through to September again, making it a very affordable after-school activity for youth. We provide healthy snacks, and they are eaten quickly. And we have a concession that is, everything is priced just above cost. Girls Group has become a staple of our calendar. We started it 3 or 4 years ago, and it is just increased in attendance every year. And there's a whole bunch of girl and girl identifying youth that come that would never come to any other time that we are open. Even though we have had an increase in gender diversity throughout, like this is the first year we've reached parity in all of our nights. But Girls Group is just a special thing, and it's such a safe space for them, and they are getting up to all types of shenanigans there and having a good time with it. I create the calendar with the youth at the end of each month and go in with the laptop, and the youth have such a good time going through Canva and picking the backgrounds and choosing the activities. Categories is on there, which I would not have picked. But a youth had just got it for Christmas, and they wanted to share it with the other youth, so they asked for it to go on the calendar so they could bring it in. And so it's a collaborative effort, and it works out quite well. All right. Perfect. And these are some photo examples of what we've been getting up to and the youth that are attending. We are pretty lucky that the youth this year, as you know, it changes all the time. But we've been fairly, knock on wood, conflict-free, and they've been working on resolving their own issues. And we have some kids who come just for 45 minutes before they have to go to a different after-school activity. But they are making it a priority because they really enjoy coming. And then there's other kids who come for a season, and then they have basketball or something else comes up, and they'll come back again when that changes. And this year has been very different. It's been a very imaginative year. We have had youth write a play, and all the kids acted in it in the multipurpose room. We've hosted a wedding, and we also hosted a divorce. We've done a whole bunch of different things, and it's just all youth-led. There's no way I could have predicted in any way, shape, or form that was going to happen this year. But it's a safe and supportive environment, and they feel very comfortable doing whatever it is that they would like to get up to. We have had fabulous youth workers, and the youth come in just to update the youth workers on their day and what's going on with their lives and popping back in, and it is very lovely to see. All right, you're good. In addition to all of our youth center, we have after-school programs for youth, specifically for grades, for all of the grades, but these ones are specific for grades 6 to 9. Programs are offered at no cost, and they include a healthy snack. And we provide equipment for youth that aren't able to have them. One of my favorite new programs for this year is disc golf, and NEA came and they really wanted to host this program, and we thought we'd have all the kids walk there. And then it was suggested maybe the kids could bike there. And not all the kids had bikes, but we have bikes through the bike club, so we loaned the kids bikes. So now they are biking there. They're using a village recreation resource for free. They're using discs for the disc golf that the school has given us, and then they're biking back. And it's just such a layered program where everybody has come together to help, and it's super fun, and everybody's having a good time. So that has been an awesome one. We have also just started Coffee Club, and that's specific for grades 8 to 9, and students are coming in and learning how to be baristas. And that's being hosted in part by Wanderlust Coffee. And it has had great feedback, and I just had a coffee before we came here from them, so it's working well for me as well. We have continued with our staple programs. We have Ride, Dig, Ride. We have Bike Club. We have Babysitter Meet and Greet, which has become a great community event where parents can come and interview babysitters, and the babysitters can meet families ahead of time, and it makes everything a little bit more comfortable. This year we have also gotten some youth into leadership roles, and we've had grade 8 youth lead a primary art program, and different youth do Minecraft, so they're sharing their skills with the younger grades, which has been, it's been good to see. Like, they take on these roles, and then when kids see them at recess or otherwise, they're so excited. So that makes fun. This year, we were also contacted by a community member who wanted to see more adaptive programming, and they had a program in mind that they had seen, and Sue hopped right on it, and now we're offering Challenger Baseball, and that's an adaptive sports program for youth who don't feel comfortable playing sports in a more traditional environment. That's it.
So we really believe that community partnerships are essential to our success. So by utilizing existing expertise in the community, we ensure there's no duplication of services, and we're able to offer a wide range of programming. So this past year, our after-school community program partners included the United Riders of Cumberland, Lake Park Society, Gravity Mountain Bike, Cumberland Community Forest Society, Lush Valley, as well as the Cumberland Museum and Archives. So we know these programs are important. There's evidence-based research that clearly indicates how important it is. So we know that participation in the youth center and after-school programming decreases high-risk behaviors. It improves the school attendance, academic performance, social behaviors, and awareness of healthy lifestyles. And it also increases opportunities for leadership, a sense of belonging, and community involvement. And so our experience over the last 11 years of operating the youth center and observing youth and speaking with families and staff really reflect how beneficial these programs are.
Yeah. And as I said before, this is the first year that we've had equality with gender diversity throughout all days at the youth, well, not for girls group, but through the other times that the youth center is open. And we've also had several youth come who have changed their pronouns and changed their names, and we have youth attend who are, on the spectrum for autism or ADHD or anything like that. And the youth just accept, it's so nice to see it's so different out there than what we probably all experienced in high school. And they just are not bothered. They accept all of these changes and they roll with it, and they're like, yep, you can be Pierce and your pronouns can be he, and that is just fine. We have a ways to go with some other, conflict issues, but it's nice to see that how flexible of a mindset the youth have and the changes that they have, which I like seeing. Because last year we weren't sure what this year would look like, and we knew we were going to be needing a new home or receiving a new home in a couple of years, we took the time to survey all of the youth from grades 5 to grade 9 in the school to see what they were looking for in a youth center for the future and what needs we could address right now. So as part of that, we surveyed 332 youth, and the answers were not what I was expecting. You kind of assume, or I had assumed, that kids growing up in a small town don't like it. There's not very much to do. They're kind of trapped, and what we saw instead was that most of them really like living in a small town. They feel safe, they like that everybody knows who they are. It's small, so they have walkability, they can get to where they want to go, which makes them feel more independent because they are kind of in control of their own lives. They like being in a nature-focused space and the proximity to the lake. Most dirt biking was mentioned so many times, mountain biking, volleyball. They like the outdoor active lifestyle. And it was different from what I was expecting to see, which I thought was interesting. Some things they were looking for is more outdoor hangout spots. Most youth don't have data on their phones. They can't afford it. Their parents won't pay for it. So they need access to Wi-Fi locations. So this is why a lot of them hang out right in front of the school after hours, because they can use the school Wi-Fi. And there's not very many places in town where there are free Wi-Fi locations, and that is covered. So that's something that they were looking forward to seeing in the future. Also, we received feedback from a lot of them that they can't attend the youth center or some of our after-school programs because they live in Royston or Fanny Bay or Union Bay, and they have to take the bus right after school. So there's just no ability for them to hang out, so transportation was an issue. As well, in the summer, the lake becomes a third space for the youth to hang out at, and we see a lot of youth there. And then usually a lot of them will come in the morning, and then they'll come hang out with us at the youth center in the afternoon. And we ask them, we're like, how did you get to the lake? And a fair number of them walk, which is crazy. Or they'll ride their bikes, or a parent will drop them off in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon. But what they would really like to see is a bus so they could be in control of their own movements and capabilities. So, yeah.
Yeah, so operating all of this youth programming is not without its challenges. Staffing can be a bit challenging due to the part-time nature of the work. We're required to be flexible all the time to meet the changing needs of youth and obviously the changing spaces that we've had over the past year. Matching the skills of staff to the emerging needs of youth can take some ongoing effort, and just, as we've already mentioned, just the external challenges that are beyond our control that impact our operations, such as the temporary loss of space, having to relocate the program numerous times, and having the challenge of operating out of a much smaller space than what we had been used to for 10 years. But despite all of these challenges, we continue to provide consistent, meaningful program for youth. So the youth center and after-school programs for this age group cost $60,000 a year, with the most significant costs being for program staff. We're grateful to the school district for providing in-kind use of facilities, which reduces the overall cost of the program. And of course, we're really grateful for the village's continued support of these programs. So your multi-year commitment really plays a vital role in maintaining this program, and it allows us to leverage additional funding from other sources. It really strengthens our funding applications because it illustrates the trust and confidence that our community has in our society to deliver this programming. So other funding that goes towards the youth center and programming is we get school district community links funding, a BC community gaming grant, as well as CCSS fundraisers and individual donations. So looking sort of at the bigger picture, operating a small charity is really hard work, basically. We continue to face ongoing financial challenges in maintaining current service levels, so securing sufficient and sustainable funding is a constant challenge for us. So last year we ended the year with a $30,000 deficit just due to a rising operating cost, reduced donation revenue, and an increase in the number of families requesting subsidies. But fortunately we had some retained earnings in place, which allowed us to cover the shortfall. So this year we've been taking some proactive steps to help strengthen our financial position. We reduced our expenses by further tightening up our budget. We applied for several new grant opportunities, a few of which were successful. We increased communications around our annual food security campaign in an effort to solicit extra donations. We added a holiday fundraiser, and then we also worked really hard to increase revenues with our Thunderballs fundraiser. So I'm happy to share that Thunderballs was really successful. We raised $61,000, which is a $6,000 increase from last year, so that's really great. So as a result of all these efforts, we should be on track to end the year without a deficit. So our future goals, and over the next year, we'll continue to focus on maintaining program continuity and advocating with the school district and school admin to have a temporary space to operate the program. Things are constantly changing at the school, so we don't really have a commitment for the next year, but the school district admin seems very keen on helping us maintain this programming, so we're pretty sure that they'll find us a space to continue operating. We really appreciate the amendment that you made to our service agreement last fall to provide in-kind use of this space. We'd love to offer some pop-up programming in the evenings, but at this time we don't have the staff capacity. But we'll continue to work to increase our capacity so we can try some new ideas and engage a broader demographic of youth. And we're really looking forward to moving into a new space in September 2027 once the school expansion is complete. So again, we really appreciate your long-standing commitment to this program. You guys have been supporting the program since day one, and it's really played a big part in ensuring we can continue to maintain our current service level. So thank you.
Thank you both. That was a great presentation. I will let the rest of council chime in before I thank you more.
Well, we sure know about loss of space. But
Where do you guys store these tables?
they just appear and reappear.
Yeah, we
Isn't
don't
that
know.
right, Rachel?
Outside of our purview.
Just saying thanks. And I've been to bingo that's been standing room only the last couple of times I've been, so that's got to be working out a little bit too. So just thank you guys for everything, and yeah, look forward to working together in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. My daughter's up there right now doing girls group. She goes pretty much every Monday. So yeah, really appreciate everything you guys are doing. Also really like seeing all of the collaboration that's going on between all of the service groups here in town. Really nice to see the community coming together and supporting each other. Yeah, thank you.
Well, it certainly fits well with our goals of keeping the youth engaged here and out of trouble. I'm not sure that all the troublemakers necessarily make it your way, but it's certainly a good start. And I just was wondering if you have other collaborations with places like the Link, or if there's some cross-valley programming or things like that that happen.
Yeah, previously there was a youth workers meeting that happened once a month, and that's kind of tapered off. And at the Link, and we share our stats and what's happening in each place.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Echo all of that, and wonderful work as ever. I was particularly pleased, intrigued to see the survey and hear your survey outcomes. It's not that there's nothing to do in town. It's actually that you know the nature of a small community is really valued, and I know our children feel that way. And as older adults, they really recognise that was an important part of their growing up. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm hoping you can share those survey results with us directly by email or something, just so we have that purview when we're thinking about
Of course.
everything, particularly youth in town. And I just wanted to say, I think it's not a coincidence that kids are more accepting now. You have provided a space for them that is accepting, and so you're modeling that behavior, and that is spilling out into the youth community. And I think the very nature of our community schools also encourages that as much as possible. So I commend you on that work and the way you are cultivating our youngest community members and teaching them how to be amazing humans. And like Councillor Tyrion said, the partnerships between the lake and the museum and all the other people you guys do after school programming with, I think is also not just good for those youth, but good for their parents, because they go home and talk about it to their parents, which is powerful. So thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you for taking the small amount of money we offer and the collaboration we offer and developing it into a massive service for the village. Thanks. Thanks for being here. Okay, and next up is Accessibility and Inclusion Action Plan.
Hello.
Hello.
This is wonderful hearing about all the barrier-free and
Right?
inclusive programming all over the village.
Yeah.
So
One thing leading into another.
yes,
It's good.
continuing on that theme. So Isha Matus Gibbs from Urban Matters is here to present the Accessibility and Inclusion Action Plan, but I'll just briefly introduce the plan to you. So the creation of the action plan arose out of the requirement of the Accessible BC Act that for all municipalities to have, actually local governments to have an accessibility plan. The village already had an accessibility plan from years ago focused on the built environment. We took the opportunity to update the plan, to look at services, and council asked us to look at the plan with the broader inclusion lens, which was really great. So we've done that with the committee for this action plan. The plan looks at services. There's a real focus on services and how we could improve those services. And to do this, we also had to look behind the services at our administration, our corporate work we do, and things like training, hiring practices, procurement, and of course our policies that we follow as staff. For the implementation of the action plan, actions will come forward to council at budget time. Some of the actions will be part of larger projects. Some of those are already being considered by staff. Others will be standalone projects. There's a bit of grant funding available to the village from Spark BC that's been being held for us, and we'll look at what actions best fit that funding for the 2027 budget. Other actions will mean service level increases, and council will be able to assess that with staff at budget time I think it's happening after the election, shortly after the election. Overall, the action plan is intended to be practical and achievable for the village with actions that will make the greatest impact to the community. Before I pass you over to Isha, I just wanted to recognize and thank members of the regional committee who came out and gave us feedback on the draft plan. And I also want to thank members of the village's Accessibility and Inclusion Committee, some of them who have been on the committee for coming on 10 years. They are incredibly knowledgeable and have unwavering perseverance and patience. The members have led us as staff to look at what we do through an accessibility lens and now through the greater inclusion lens. And one observation I wanted to share is when the committee first started back in, I think, 2016-17, it was the committee that really had to push to have conversations about accessibility. And about, not a while ago, there was a bit of a shift, and it was staff initiating those conversations. So it really shows that their work to have us use those lenses has really made a difference to how the village operates. So I'll pass it over to Isha, and she'll review the plan with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Welcome, Isha.
Thank you very much for having me today. I do quite a few of these plans around the province with various communities, and I just have to say what a delight it has been to work with Cumberland on this project, and the creativity and commitment of staff throughout the way, and the involvement of the committee has made this a very pleasurable experience, and one that I think has resulted in quite a meaningful and implementable plan, especially for smaller municipalities. Sometimes this can feel like daunting work, and I think the practical nature of your staff has paved the way for this to be a really great plan. So. Next slide. Oh, I have power. Fantastic. So over the last year, Urban Matters has been working with the village to create an accessibility and inclusion plan for the village. We met regularly with Village Accessibility and Inclusion Committee for input and reviewed the action plan with them and the Regional Accessibility Committee as well. We also created a public survey, and that informed the actions that are identified in this plan. We also did a fairly thorough dive into some of the plans and documents related to accessibility or programs and servicing for the Village of Cumberland, and looked into those in terms of where some gaps and opportunities might be for improving accessibility overall. So the actions identified in the plan are to move Cumberland towards 6 key goals. These actions are all related to governance ultimately, and I think the key question that was asked throughout this process was, how do we ensure that diverse voices are heard, that they're part of our civic processes, public life, and involved in decision making within our community? are diverse people feeling welcomed, included, and part of the village? And how can the village take leadership to demonstrate and lead with role modeling? So the 6 goals focus on information, communication, and engagement processes to increase the ability of residents and visitors to receive and use information related to village activities. The aim of this is to increase participation in civic activities and community events, and increase belonging and inclusion in general. The next is around increasing employment opportunities within the village for more diverse people. We know that increasing diversity within organizations brings knowledge and viewpoints and improves the overall ability of an organization to accommodate or work with more people overall. We looked at building staff and municipal capacity to identify, remove, and prevent barriers to inclusion and accessibility. The more we can build this, I always call the accessibility lens a bit of a muscle, right? The more we strengthen it and practice it, the more natural it becomes, the more we can do with it. We looked at enhancing accessibility and inclusion practices for service and program delivery. We know that this is a big part of how people interact with the municipality, and we want to improve that experience and lead the way by example for business event organizers and others who contribute to the public realm of Cumberland. We did look at improving accessibility of buildings, public spaces, and infrastructure, and although that wasn't the main focus of this plan, we did identify some key areas that this can be improved, specifically around maintenance and improvement of active transportation like trails and sidewalks, et cetera, that haven't been the focus of a specific plan yet. And then improving awareness and supports for people to prepare for emergencies. So working with the fire department, building capacity through training and skill development, some procurement of new equipment that will help them, and ensuring that the village is building emergency response capacity with equity at the forefront of that work. So I spoke to do that there too. I spoke briefly to the process that we went through. So we started with a document review and then had a workshop with staff to explore accessibility and understand more about what kinds of things are priorities for them, areas they're already working on, things that they're hearing within the community. And then we did community engagement through a survey and working with the accessibility committee. We then drafted actions and reviewed those with the regional accessibility committee members as well as staff through various departments, and then finalized the plan. I just want to note that the village has already been working to incorporate accessibility and inclusion into municipal practices and has made significant progress to date. Some existing areas of strength that we discovered in our background review are working collaboratively with the Accessibility and Inclusion Committee, addressing barriers in the built environment through a variety of audits and plans and physical improvements. A lot of work has been done on changing attitudes and understanding, and village staff are invested in learning about and removing barriers to village services, and this shows up in many ways. Improved inclusive communications, such as developing more accessible governance and providing advice for inclusive events and engagement opportunities in the community, and providing leading practice guidance for accessible design, such as using universal design in transportation and facility projects. So there's already been considerable work, which is the foundation for this plan. I won't beleaguer this, but again, we had meetings with the Accessibility and Inclusion Committee, a public survey, and staff workshop. And the snapshot from our engagement is that there were some high-level themes high-level themes around what people are looking for as far as improvements. And we heard about clear and accessible information. We heard it's important to consider diverse needs across programs and services. We heard the built environment continues to need some improvements, although many have been made. And we heard that people are wanting to be engaged and involved in decision making. We also heard that how people interact with staff at the village shapes how people feel a sense of belonging within our community. And so that frontline staff, the interactions that people are having, are a really important part of how people experience the community here. And I just want to share a few key quotes that I think highlight some of the voices of community in this work. One is, I think accessibility is seen as only physical, and many barriers are not addressed, especially for marginalized groups. All of Cumberland values that diversity exists in our community and that we all belong, and that there are benefits for everyone if this is a value at the core of our community. Education, drawing on the members of our village who hold knowledge in this area, people with lived experience and professionals, and being open to their knowledge and ways of doing, seen as an important method of implementing this work. One person said, having an awareness that there are people like me in this community that would like to participate, but most of the time physically can't do so, would go a long way. One said, I feel like ideas are not being listened to and programs are not up to their full potential. I feel there needs to be a shift. An acknowledgement that the need for this work acknowledgement of the need for this work is a great first step. It won't be easy, but there are great resources in our community who could help. So the 6 areas that this plan focused on, all of the actions are divided by these sort of buckets of work or areas where work can be done. So we focused on village services, programs, and practices. So this is looking at how things are actually delivered within the community. We looked at attitudes and understanding, so ensuring that staff and key personnel are aware of a diversity of needs to best serve people with accessibility and inclusion experiences. We did look at the built environment and transportation networks. We looked at communications, engagement, and technology. So finding ways to address how people are engaged in village activities and receiving and accessing information. We looked at employment and building a strong workplace culture that welcomes and supports individuals with a range of accessibility and inclusion experiences. And we looked at governance and capacity. So how can the village enable diverse voices being involved in decision making? These 6 focus areas also align with the Accessible BC Act and the conception of barriers that are identified within that act, looking at accessibility and inclusion through a social model, which indicates that it's our environments that play a key role in how people access their communities, not their physical bodies. So the goal is that Village of Cumberland is an accessible and inclusive community where people of all abilities, backgrounds, and identities feel safe, respected, and welcomed. Building a community where all residents experience barrier-free access to village programs and services, can freely move through public spaces, and feel connected and engaged in local decision-making. So I think one of the pieces of this plan that makes it really implementable is how the actions are structured. So they're grouped into the focus areas, and then they identify the approach and the service area lead. So which department within the city staff is responsible for leading the work. All of the actions have an internal focus. And so, sometimes these plans focus on advocacy or efforts on relationship building in the community, and there's a little bit of the relationship piece in this plan. But I think the accountability to internal practices really shines through in this particular plan. And so each of the actions are structured under the focus area, the area of work that is applicable, and then the action, an approach, which I'll go over in a moment, and then the lead department that will be taking responsibility for this. So in terms of implementation, this is the approach to implementation that was created for this plan. We really looked at how can we, there's so many different things that can come up in terms of how these things are implemented, what grants are available, how budgeting processes go, what other projects are happening within the community. And so we created 4 categories for implementation approaches. One is creating guidance. So this is actually creating tools or resources that can be used. So internal standards, guidance to support consistent, accessible practices. And these actions may need prioritization based on staff time and budget. They might need some support from external consultants like lived experience groups and sometimes partners like accessibility committees. But ultimately, these are about creating the actual tools, guides, and processes that will allow this plan to be implemented. The second set of actions is around applying guidance. So this is really about the implementation of those tools and ensuring that implementing what is created is captured right in this plan so that there's an ability to report out on it when this plan is being updated or when council is receiving updates on actions in the plan. We then looked at building capacity and training. So these are actions that build staff and organizational knowledge, skills, and awareness to support effective implementation and sustain the efforts and work that happen. And then there are event-triggered actions. So these are activated when routine municipality activities occur. So there's actions related to hiring, things that you can do in a future hiring process. There's things related to capital projects, things that can be done the next time a project is implemented, when a service changes or emergency events. So I'll give you a couple of examples under each of these categories just to illustrate how the plan is structured. So in terms of creating guidance, there's 30 actions for creating guidance, and they're things like reviewing recreation program offerings for gaps in demographics, accessibility, and registration. So this is using some research to understand who isn't being served currently and how they can be served better, and then continuing to track whether the demographics that are being served is shifting over time as a way of measuring progress. And then another is updating and promoting the accessibility brochure for businesses that already exists and needs a refresh and then can be implemented quite quickly. This also looks at things like document design and production, website accessibility, events and engagement planning, employment strategies. So these kinds of things that guidelines or practices can be created around. Building capacity, there's 19 actions related to building capacity, and there's an appendix in the plan that identifies how this capacity can be built through training and education. And there's a few categories. There's skills and training development that are standard for everyone in the organization. So this would be things like inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility awareness that supports cultural shifts and addresses attitudinal and social barriers. And then there's standards and best practices, and this is only for some staff who these standards and best practices would relate to in the day-to-day activities of their job. For example, not every staff person needs an HR best practices training, but people who are involved in HR and managers certainly do. So selecting who needs what information. And then looking at what technical skills you can bring on board in your staff, either through new hires or by training a few people. So this could be things like having someone on staff have web accessibility certification so that they're able to monitor the website independently and not need external support for that. Or building accessibility auditing skills related to the built environment, so has some ability to self-assess the community as new projects emerge or in the course of maintenance activities. So then we have some event-triggered actions. There's 9 of these. So for example, in employment advertising, this action doesn't need to be done until there's a position to be posted, but in the event that it is, then one of the actions is sharing the job posting with service providers included it says the distribution list. Creating that is another action, and sharing postings as they're published. So these kinds of actions are really just about following best practices as events happen at appropriate times. And this one, and then applying guidance. So there's 13 actions related to applying guidance. So for example, once an engagement checklist for accessibility and inclusion has been created, using it in future events. Ensuring digital application forms and commonly used public-facing documents are accessible to screen readers. That's another example of an action that can be, or guidance that can be applied in future work. So understandings of accessibility and inclusion are constantly changing as additional barriers are identified and better solutions are developed. Things change with technology, with new understandings. And so monitoring the changing context of accessibility and inclusion will help the village understand and make decisions in keeping with promising practices and industry standards. So in terms of monitoring, the outcome of a specific best practice, it's, monitoring on this is sort of taken to one step easier than that, related to, are you following current best practices as they emerge? Do you have a mechanism to change and update your progress? So you'll be looking at service area reporting, like I said, collecting data, demographics, accessing services. Is that reflective of the community? Are diverse folks accessing that? The village annual report, so a summary of progress can be placed in the village annual report each year, and help with aligning with council strategic priorities. And then, of course, the Accessibility and Inclusion Committee meeting minutes. That committee will continue to be involved in implementation, I'm sure. And so some of the meeting discussions will capture the advice and lived experience insight from participating members. Rachel touched on this already. The key parts of resourcing for this will be staff time as part of their regular workflows and developing different habits and skills around how they do their work. There's going to be some training and education for staff and council. This involves allocating a portion of training budget to those kinds of courses when you're selecting what training will be done in a year. And some actions or projects may require funds to pay experts, like people with lived and living experience, to provide perspective or to assist with writing guidelines. And as Rachel mentioned, there's several grants and other opportunities that can be explored to take on that work over time. And that is all from me.
Thank you so much, Isha, for walking us through. This is a great report. And I especially appreciate, like you mentioned, the action, the chart with the allocation of time, and it looks like corporate services is going to need a lot more capacity. I think so. I'll turn it over to council for comments or questions.
Well, I'll thank you very much for this. I think it's it's an excellent piece of work. I've got a fair amount of familiarity on the digital side with WCAG and those sort of pieces, and my lessons and learning from there is that I think, as we all recognise, if you make something accessible for those who have challenges accessing it, you usually make it better for everybody. And so this is an investment not just in helping maybe minorities in our community. It's investment that actually pays dividends to a whole community. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this gets built into, but basically the day-to-day work continues to be built into, because already it's beginning the day-to-day work of the team. So thank you.
I just want to say thank you for this work. It really crystallizes the long-standing progress I think this village has been making. It's been since 2016 that this has been working its way through. So this really provides a very good roadmap that I think both council and particularly staff, who are going to absorb most of the burden of assimilating this into our day-to-day governance. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Yes, thank you, Isha. It's been a pleasure watching this come about and watching the committee work on all of this. I just had a couple of questions about a couple of the event-triggered.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that some of them, if the event has happened and we're not already ready for this, we're too late. Or am I misunderstanding a little bit about how particularly things like ensure diverse members of the community are planned for and supported during an evacuation? This seems like I say, once the event is happening, that we should already have the plan in place.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, Councillor. So the way that one was framed kind of came from the fact that in the regional district here, we have the Comox Valley Emergency Management. So they do quite a bit of the pre-work around emergency planning, and the role of the local fire department and emergency responsers is more around implementing that work. And so that one really speaks to, there's another associated action around getting training and skill development there, and that one's really around, are we able to implement that, right? And of course, it takes an emergency to have that event triggered, and hopefully we never experience one, and certainly hopefully we never experience two. But the hope of that action is that in the event of an emergency, it's an awareness of the emergency responders. They have the tools, they're able to take action in that way, and that they're reflecting on any challenges or successes that they had during that process and capturing it and applying it to future learning.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, our staff has a really good accessibility lens the last 10 years, that's for sure. Worth mentioning. I'm just curious at the low engagement for the survey.
Yeah, I think surveys are always difficult, and they're sort of hit and miss in terms of how much participation there is. We did everything we could to promote and ensure that the survey was available in multiple formats, online, paper copies. We had some here in the center. And I think accessibility and inclusion often are, if you're already kind of engaged in it, you're interested in doing the survey, but a lot of people in the general public don't feel like they have anything to share on that front. And so again, it's unfortunately just one of those things that it can be a bit hit and miss in terms of whether it's a topic people are jumping on board with.
Yeah, thanks, great report.
Yeah, thank you.
I do have one additional question. One thing that kind of stuck out there is how you can include people with lived experience into perhaps assessing how well a project has met their expectations. How do you go about that engagement? How do other communities go about getting that? Because it can be a bit sensitive to try and say, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
What is it? I guess, how do you do that?
Absolutely. Thank you. Amazing question. There are a whole variety of ways to do it. This is one of the reasons that the provincial government legislated accessibility committees in the Accessible BC Act, is that there's such an invaluable space to run ideas by. Those committees are in various stages of forming, and so I'm seeing examples from across the province that are different here and there. Here in the region and here in the village, we have established committees, which is like perfect. But those are spaces where you can take upcoming projects and have them give input and provide it. Some ways of building the capacity for committees to do that I've seen are actually giving committee members some training around how to put on an accessibility lens, or the various things that they can be looking for in those kinds of schematics and plans. It takes a bit to learn how to read a landscaping plan, for example. So there's trainings available and out there that can be done with committees to help them build that skill and get even more precise feedback. I've seen municipalities have a referral policy of what kinds of projects they would refer to the committee for comment before moving forward. I've also seen, we actually just finished a project in West Kelowna where they trained community auditors. So people with lived and living experience received an 8-hour training course on how to audit active transportation infrastructure, and then went out in community and completed an audit, which will be used to guide what priorities are for changes in future work. And I know that the Comox Valley has had trained auditors as well through some of their accessibility work, and that's part of what's led to the sort of ranking of roads map that's available for the town of Comox. That was funded through Spark BC and done in partnership with the regional committee. So there's some great examples of how you can do that, kind of from low-hanging fruit of bringing it to your existing committee right up to looking for funding and support for deeper knowledge building or additional projects.
Could I also add one thing with going through this plan? I think we really realized how many built environment accessibility consultants there are out there that have really specialized technical knowledge that I think we've been lacking and wondering where to get that knowledge. So for some projects, staff could look at adding additional budget to have a consultant like that to give feedback on that, because some of the like Isha was saying, some of it is very technical and really often beyond what sort of community members might have knowledge for, so we can use those resources as part of projects.
Yeah, if I may add on to that as well, Rachel, I think that's part of the importance of the building capacity related actions, right? I think, of course you want to have people with lived experience giving perspective and insight, but so many of the best practices and emerging practices and tools like website accessibility standards or accessible document production, those are all created in consultation with people with lived and living experience. And so if you're able to train and orient staff in that way and build their skill set in that, I think as long as you're working with consultants or trainers or standards that have been created in partnership with people with lived and living experience, you're going to do a better job of implementing it, right? And it's still respecting that person with lived and living experience voice. One thing I hear often from accessibility committees is, why can't they just implement the standards that are already out there that we gave input on, right? So I kind of always go, okay, as simple as Google, is there a standard related to this? Was it co-created with people with lived and living experience? Great, I'm going to start trying to incorporate that into my work more.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's
You're welcome.
a great answer.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the work, and and for getting us off to a good start with the planning and the action piece. And thanks for being here to present.
Thank you very much.
Next up is question period. Any questions from our in-person audience that all just presented to us? Probably not. Okay. Any questions online? No. I got all excited there because you were going to turn on your mic. Okay, well, there's a motion to adjourn to closed, including the new, do you have that? Do you want to do it?
Yeah, I can do that. So it's both reasons? Yes.
Yeah.
So I recommend that council close the meeting to public pursuant to section 90 of the Community Charter to consider discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98, and for the receipt of advice that's subject to solicitor client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose.
Seconder?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?